Hello, and welcome or welcome back to Chronic Not Crazy, where we remind you that it's not in your head and you certainly are not crazy.
We're your hosts, Ava and Maddie, and today we are going to be diving into all of our pet peeves when it comes to navigating the chaos of living with a chronic illness.
I have quite a few personally. I think that the list is never ending, but if you want to start out with yours, Ava, go ahead.
Like you said, there's many. I mean, we could spend hours upon hours talking about them, but the very first one I am going to bring up is something I'm sure we've all heard a million times, and it's, but you don't look sick.
Yes.
I know every time I hear that, I just want to rage. Even though I
Me,
don't look sick does not mean I am not sick. I
no.
can function like a normal human being. I can look completely okay, but on the inside, I am not doing so hot.
I think especially when it comes from medical providers, it's even more disheartening. I had an experience when I went to an acupuncturist actually pretty recently, and she was like, "You look so vibrant and healthy. You shouldn't need this." And I looked at her and I was like, "That's actually what took me 10 years to get diagnosed." And she was a bit taken back. But at this point, when a medical provider says it, I feel like it's really important to stand your ground if you feel comfortable doing so, because they're just going to continue to do that to more patients in the future. And as far as I'm concerned, chronic illness doesn't have any look.
Exactly. If a medical professional is telling you that and you feel comfortable, like Maddie said, please stick up for yourself. We are in a position where we try so hard to get believed by any type of medical professional that we can. And if somebody is telling you that you do not look sick, explain why you feel sick 24/7. That is extremely important to stick up for yourself no matter what.
Yes, absolutely. And kind of bouncing off of that, one of my pet peeves is everyone saying that all doctors know best, which I have a little bit of a problem with because I personally feel like there are a lot of situations, especially when it comes to women's health, that that's not the case. For example, trying to go to a GI doctor when you're trying to get an endometriosis diagnosis and being told that nothing is wrong, or that them saying that it couldn't possibly be endometriosis when that's definitely not in their area of expertise. Or another one for me is denying certain tests that I know aren't necessarily medically necessary. Like, for example, one time I was in the ER and I knew that I had an endometrioma, but they wanted to do a pap smear, but they were trying to say it was going to be a pap smear, but it was definitely just an STD panel. And I was like, there's no reason to do this. But I went ahead and did it anyways. And then that's when I got all the results back and found out that they were just testing me for STDs. And then in the future, I started to use my voice a bit more when I knew it wasn't necessary, because I really think that we know our bodies better than any medical provider does. And there are absolutely times when those tests are necessary. But there's also times when it's okay to stick up for yourself and say, "Hey, I don't think that I need this," or saying that you prefer to go to a different office to get it done at, such as like your actual gynecologist versus the ER.
100%. And one of my other pet peeves is, have you tried birth control? I know that one's kind of a hit or a miss with some people, but that one irks me. It really does. I spent multiple years trying multiple different kinds of birth controls and nothing worked for me at all.
No.
And birth control is not going to work for everybody. There are lots of individuals that I know with endometriosis and adenomyosis that birth control doesn't even touch. And it does not touch anything for me. Most of the time, it makes it significantly worse.
I experienced the same. It always made my symptoms so much worse. The only thing that worked for me is the IUD, but that's even a stretch because it maybe stopped me from having bleeding 24/7, but I was still constantly bleeding, like, and breaking through, and it didn't slow down the growth at all. And when they put the IUD in, the funny part was is that they promised that there wouldn't be endometriosis that would grow around those organs, but then my uterus and cervix fused. So that's my argument to that. But I understand it works great for some people, and birth control is great for birth control. But I definitely think that we need to stop just throwing that at patients and hoping that something will stick.
Yes. And while it is a great tool, I have had prior to, like, my symptoms getting significantly worse, there was a few birth controls that did help manage, at least at the time, my cramps and everything, but as my symptoms got worse over the years, it stopped doing anything. And
No.
the one that I was on that did significantly improve every single symptom I had got discontinued.
Oh, no. Was it the
So
implant? The arm one?
no, it was a pill form. I
Oh, okay.
My
I
sibling and I, we are very similar in the sense of we have reactions to certain things, and they tried pretty much every type of birth control aside from pills, and they had bad reactions to all of them. So I chose to just stick to the pill form.
I don't blame you, and I think especially with the overlap with MCAS and histamine intolerance and endo, it's really frustrating because majority of people can't find the right one. And I remember, I mean, they even tried to put me on a progesterone only one, but I have PMDD, and I know you've talked about also having PMDD, and it made me feel like a monster. And I was just like, I cannot continue to be on this, and it made my pain so much worse. I don't know if yours was progesterone only, I'm sure you've tried all of them as well, but
Yes.
and then another one with that is the whole medical menopause thing. I also know that that is a bit controversial, but I have read and have had my own experiences of trying it, and the only thing that it did was suppress my symptoms a little bit, but as soon as I got off of it, everything came back so much worse. I know it can work wonderfully for some people, but my biggest issue is that when we're putting super young women and girls on it at, like, 17 or younger, and we don't really know the long-term side effects, and when I looked up Orlissa, I found out that it was originally a drug for prostate cancer, and then they just remarketed it as a drug for endometriosis, and I
Why
don't
does
like
that matter?
that. It made me so mad, and that's where it's just like, and also birth control wasn't the first birth control came out before we were even included in drug trials. So it's really frustrating when nothing's actually tested on our bodies to find what works for us, and that aside, it's never been proven to necessarily slow down the growth of endometriosis in most cases.
Yes. And we are saying all of this out of opinion. Obviously,
Yes,
birth
yes.
control, if that works for you, we are so happy for you. We are so glad that you have found something that works for you and that helps manage your symptoms on a day-to-day basis. That is absolutely amazing because that can truly be so hard to find living with endometriosis and or adenomyosis. So we are extremely happy for you. We're just speaking based on opinion and personal experiences.
Yes, absolutely. I always think that's so important to say because if you found something that works for you, truly, I am so happy for you. It's so difficult with endometriosis, and I know that we've all played the game of birth control, diet, pelvic floor physical therapy, and it's kind of a gamble of what's gonna work for one person, it's not gonna work for the next.
Exactly. All of this does kind of lead into my next pet peeve, which is maybe it's just a bad period. We have all heard this, whether it's from friends and families or medical professionals. Because I know I've gotten that from medical professionals before.
Oh, yeah, and it's also the normal level of pain is 0 or maybe a 3, so for people to say it's just bad periods in itself is problematic because we shouldn't be experiencing debilitating pain on our periods, but also it's used to just dismiss that endometriosis one is not just period disease, and neither is PCOS, adenomyosis, any disease, and it's so much more than a bad period, especially when it can grow anywhere in the body, and it's so infuriating to hear that. Or when people expect you to not be in pain if you're not on your period, or I when they act weird when you're trying to explain that you have pain every single day. And a lot of people just can't really seem to grasp that concept.
Exactly, and especially when endometriosis, adenomyosis, pretty much any of those have been so widely associated with just being a uterus disease, where it just affects your period and everything like that. That doesn't help.
No, and then it leads to women getting hysterectomies unnecessarily because they think that it could be a cure to the disease because a doctor sold that to them. And then with that, we have also women getting their ovaries removed way too young because, again, they're promised that that'll stop the growth of endometriosis. But unfortunately, none of those things are proven to be true for endometriosis. And yes, I had a hysterectomy for adenomyosis, and it is a cure for that, but there's no guarantee of when you go in for the surgery of knowing if you have adenomyosis or not. So, yeah, I just think it's infuriating how so many people believe that.
Yeah. I was just talking with someone the other day about how people sometimes cannot grasp the idea that a chronic illness means that there is no cure.
Yes, and I've been dealing with that a lot after the surgery, particularly because I went with one of the top specialists. I'm so grateful for the care I got, but trying to explain to people the fear of never knowing when there's going to be another surgery, or the fact that there likely will be another surgery, but people in your life almost don't want to accept that. I'm sure you've dealt with the same, we all have dealt with the same thing. And I think endometriosis adds that extra layer of when nothing shows up on tests. And there's so much gaslighting that goes into it internally that I think I brushed over for so long despite having 5 surgeries, 6 now. It's still so easy to believe, "Oh, is it really that bad? Is there disease anywhere?" when it's not showing up on tests, and then that just leads other people in your life to have those same beliefs.
Exactly. That kinda leads into my next pet peeve, unless you had one that you wanted to share?
Um, you can keep going.
I've heard this a few times, and I know they all mean well when they say it, but at least you now know what it is. I haven't heard much of other people talk about this one, but I know sometimes that can just irk me because, yes, I am extremely happy I finally got a diagnosis, but now I have to figure out how to live the rest of my life with that diagnosis.
Right, and I don't think people talk about having to navigate that and trying to figure out how you live the rest of your life because I think when we touched on it in our last episode, you were diagnosed around 19? Am I
21? 20,
okay, so
20.
okay, I'm so sorry that I was off, but 21. So, later in life and then, when I was diagnosed at 13, it just as I think us being diagnosed at very different parts of our lives says a lot too, because when I was 13 and then in 2014, there just was no information on it. But you being diagnosed at 21, there still wasn't any information on it. And
No.
you're just given this diagnosis, and then now we know it's one of the top 20 most painful conditions you can live with. And you're just thrown into this medical system and told to navigate it. And then specialists can say they're specialists without the proper credentials. So how did you find the proper surgeon your first time?
I was actually referred to, and again, I don't think they classified themselves as a specialist. They had just worked with multiple women who have endometriosis, so I trusted them. And I got referred to them through a friend who has endometriosis, and we'll have to do a whole nother topic on that surgery alone. But I think that was back in 2021 is when I
Okay.
found out about them, and I didn't get my surgery until 2025.
Okay, so you on the wait list for 4 years?
I couldn't get them to do the surgery.
Would they not believe you? Is that
They believed me,
okay,
but I did the treatment that they recommended, attempted to. I did not do well on it. And they were like, "Well, within 6 months, if none of this is working, we can do the surgery." That was April 1st, 2024? Sorry, I did not see them in 2021. 2023. Excuse
okay,
me.
okay. No, no.
Um, and April 1st, 2024 is when I was told that within 6 months, you could be looking at getting surgery. And around that 6-month mark, I reached out. I kept in contact, up until then, obviously, like, letting them know how things were going. And at the 6-month mark, I was like, "Hey, clearly nothing's working. Can we please do this surgery?" And they were like, "Well," they never told me no, but they pretty much put it off until I think I finally was able to schedule my surgery in January of '25, and I got my surgery in March of 2025. So,
That is ridiculous, and I guess it does lead into another pet peeve of just that happens way too often in
yes.
endometriosis care because when but when generally has in the history of endometriosis care, a patient not needing surgery ends up being the outcome of their care, especially when that is the only way to technically get a diagnosis. I hate that we're trying to put so many band-aids over it before finally giving them the proper treatment, especially when there are studies that back up proper excision earlier on can just lead to longer term remission. It doesn't mean remission forever, but I just can't understand as a provider sitting there knowing that the patient is in debilitating pain and knowing that you can do something about the pain, yet continuing to put band-aids over it and just telling them essentially to suck it up and get on with it.
Exactly, and that goes into how it takes an average of 7 to 10 years to get diagnosed.
Yeah,
Well, during that 7 to 10 years, you could have gotten your first excision surgery and prevented a lot of the issues that a lot of individuals face because they couldn't get answers until by that time, a lot of their organs had to be removed because it was just
right,
so like,
right.
we could spend hours talking about that too. It's not fair. And
No,
if you're
it's
listening to this, you are not alone. There are so many of us out here who are struggling just like you are, and we are all here for you.
yes, and it's just ridiculous that it takes 7 to 10 years to get diagnosed with one of the top 20 most painful conditions. But yes, as Ava said, none of us are in it alone, but we certainly deserve better. And I would argue that the entire process of endometriosis care is just inhumane as a whole.
Yes.
Not only the process of getting diagnosed, but then the main treatment option being cut open again and again and barely looking into any other options. I mean, now they're finally researching the endo 245, I believe, is the peptide, but it's just ridiculous that it's taking us this long to realize maybe we should have less invasive treatment options or, hey, I don't know, less invasive ways to get people diagnosed because the
Yeah.
only way to be diagnosed properly, again, is to be cut into. And it just feels so inhumane. And then the amount of poking and prying that you have to go through with pelvic exams, internal ultrasounds, pap smears, IUD insertion if you get an IUD, all of it, it just feels so inhumane when you're on the receiving end of it, and I don't know if you've also felt that way.
Yeah. My internal ultrasound was the absolute worst. I personally felt that my internal ultrasound was worse than my pap smear, but I couldn't feel my pap smear because of how much pain I was in. My internal ultrasound, on the other hand, I felt that the entire time, and that was probably the worst thing I've experienced, including my surgery. Like, I would rather get the surgery than get an internal ultrasound again.
Yeah, I think I've had at least, like, 30 internal ultrasounds at this point, and it's just the one that makes me the most angry is I had a 7 centimeter cyst, and it was hemorrhaging into itself, and I went to the ER 5 times within a week. Every single time they told me that there was nothing there. That was the same ER trip that they forced me to do the STD panel drain, and I looked back at the images and I saw the huge cyst, and thankfully, I went to my gynecologist that same week because I knew something wasn't right, and the ultrasound at that time showed the cyst of being 4 centimeters, but then when they went in for surgery the next day, that's when they found out it was 7 centimeters and hemorrhaging into itself, and then I got told the classic line of, "I don't know how you walked around in this much pain," which is another pet peeve of mine
Yeah.
because we were trying to tell you that we were in that much pain, and I'm not sure if you've had a provider tell you that as well. But
Yeah, I think I have at least once.
and it's a crazy thing to say of all things that they could say. It's
Yeah.
those are the choice of words.
That actually gives me another one. And this one, it I think this one probably tops it all. You were just fine yesterday. Like when you have to cancel plans or whatever it is because,
Right.
you know, yesterday I was feeling amazing, but today I don't. And people are upset with you because you canceled plans. And they were like, well, you were out and about yesterday and you were doing just fine yesterday. I can't control it.
No,
Wish
no,
I
and exactly. If I could, I would, but I don't think people understand dynamic disabilities or chronic illness whatsoever until they experience it, and I don't want anyone to experience it,
No.
but it can definitely feel like there's just a lack of empathy from other people in your life who don't deal with it, rather it's family, friends, or whoever it may be. But I've learned that it's so important to set those boundaries, and I'm sure you're the same way of standing my ground. But it can be hard, especially when it's loved ones, and you really sometimes it can make you feel like the flaky friend or you'll be labeled as the flaky friend, at least I've had that experience, and it can really suck because that's the last thing that you want, and I think also a lot of us with chronic illness are overachievers, so a lot of times we'll really push ourselves even when we shouldn't go out and do things, so maybe it looked like we were feeling great yesterday, but our pain level was probably still at least a baseline of a 6, and now today it's at an 8 or a 9,
I was
but
just gonna say, most of the time when you see me out and about, it's because I'm powering through and I need to be out and about. It's not because I feel fine or I'm doing great. It's because I had to get stuff done. My life can't just be put on pause because I'm in a lot of pain, even though some days I would really love to just press pause for a full 24 hours so I can recover.
right, right, but that's just not the reality.
No. But I think that is pretty much all of my pet peeves. Did you have any more?
I'm trying to think. Um, no, I would say, I guess the only one is kind of it getting in the way of your own life constantly and always having to change your course or your plans. And other people in your life can sometimes view that as either being lazy or unmotivated, or another one is just being unsure of yourself. And I think that those things can be really frustrating to be told, especially when you feel so sure of what you want to do, but your body just won't allow for you to do it.
Yes. And before we end, I just want to give a message to all of our listeners. If you are currently experiencing a time in your life where you feel like nothing is going right and you don't know what to do because you just received your diagnosis and you had all of these plans for your life, let this be your example. I am finishing up my bachelor's degree in a week. I own a business and I work full time. Now, does this strain my body being this busy? Yes. but you can do it. The important thing is to set boundaries. With my business, I have boundaries. I have certain times where I don't do anything with my business. I'm a photographer, so if I have a wedding, I'm immediately taking the next 2 days off from school, from not necessarily my full-time job, but I'm taking it very lightly the next day. You can do amazing things as long as you set boundaries for yourself.
Yes, congratulations on being so close to graduating. That's so
I am so
exciting.
excited.
Oh my god, yay. And I guess my message is that I'm working on my degree in biomedicine and I'm going to end up pursuing endometriosis research. And I'm working on a few other projects that I can't quite yet talk about. And I always hate when people say that. But everything will work out in the way that it's supposed to. And that's not meant to be toxic positivity because as Ava said, it doesn't mean that it's not hard because it absolutely is, but you can do it, and there are a lot of people out there who want to support you, especially when it comes to going to school. Don't forget that there are a lot of resources out there, and you can apply for things such as 504s or other combinations if school is a path that you want to take. Don't completely rule it out just because you feel like you might need a little bit of extra help along the way, because I promise that there are so many people out there who want to help you.
Yes. So, your symptoms are real. Your frustrations are valid. Thank you for listening to Chronic Not Crazy, and we hope that you continue to tune in.